Hello and welcome. This is the Business Spotlight series. I'm Sean Schoenmakers, the owner of Action Coach Dallas, where we are helping small business owners build and grow their businesses, ultimately, of course, to improve their lives. Today we have a guest with us, Regan Simpson, and he is the owner of Infinite Health Services. And so he's going to tell us some of the details about that company and a little bit about his story and how he has gotten to where he is so far, and we'll get into any and all details that are interesting and that he's willing to share. So we're glad to have you on, Regan. How are you?
Great. Thanks for having me. It's nice to have this opportunity.
Absolutely. We're looking forward to it. So without, just forgot, if you're a first-time viewer on the channel, make sure you like and subscribe so you can get the notifications when we drop more of these valuable conversations into the channel. And outside of that, without further ado, Regan, could you give us an introduction to your company and could you tell us some of the problems that you guys solve?
Sure. Yeah. So I'm the CEO of Infinite Health Services. This company began in 2022. It was founded by Brittany Slowey, who is our founder. Interesting sort of beginning to the company was that Brittany had suffered a pretty significant brain injury back in 2003. So she was a patient within the health system for quite some time, learned the good, the bad, the
Mhm.
ugly in hospitals and healthcare, and really have taken that to this company. So our company has a number of different branches. We do a number of different services for hospitals. It ranges from interoperative neuro monitoring to remote patient monitoring post-discharge. We also do billing services. We do revenue cycle management. We do general consulting. We kind of cover the gamut for hospitals so that a lot of that back office work can be managed outside. The biggest part of our service line is probably the remote patient monitoring. And if you think of it as patients being discharged from a hospital, they are home, they are in their own environment. But if something were to go wrong, typically that patient is going to go back to the ER. And for hospital systems, that's a very expensive admission, someone coming through their emergency room. But also, it's generally not the best management of a patient. So
Mhm.
do remote monitoring where patients are monitored with smart devices. We are connected to physicians' offices. So if there were any negative side effects, negative issues, we connect it directly to the physician's office and they manage that patient's care through us. So the real value for our partners is we keep those patients out of the hospital, out of their very expensive beds, out of their
Mhm.
very expensive ERs, and then obviously save patients a considerable amount when they're not having to pay those co-pays and deductibles for the hospital.
Nice. Yeah, I feel like the ER can be a little bit of that catch-all where it's like, well, it's concerning and I don't really know what to do, so let me go to the ER. Whereas maybe you guys can head off some of that
Yeah,
with a more appropriate style of
yeah.
care, for example.
Well,
Yeah.
and I've got family I've worked in ERs for many, many years, and the common thought historically was that the ER is the back door to the hospital. In fact,
Yeah.
it's really the front door. It's
Yeah.
where the
It really
vast
is.
majority of those patients are coming in.
Yeah.
And so they, ideally would like to mitigate some of that and keep it off-site, managed elsewhere, and using the ER for the true emergencies.
Yeah. And I tell you, they can be expensive, goodness. So I'm sure there are
Yes.
better routes that people would prefer from obviously from a care, but also maybe the cost perspective. So
Yeah, and it's all just part of, healthcare is becoming a little bit more, let's say, diversified and kind of moving it into different spaces. A few years ago, you saw a lot of community hospitals popping up, and the
mhm.
idea was to keep the traffic away from the hospitals themselves. And this is just more sort of along those lines. It's sort of an adjunct to that.
Yeah, good stuff. And so maybe we could talk a little bit more about what makes the business special. So I know you said that the founder was a woman that had some issues way back when. So What's the story? How and why did this business get started? I know you mentioned she kind of experienced a lot of it, and maybe that was the genesis. But tell us, how and why did this business
Yeah.
get started?
Yeah, I think that is absolutely the origin story. That's where it started way back. It actually became a company in 22, and it was strictly because of an identification of a need in the market.
Mm,
So as remote patient monitoring has become something more that is reimbursed, is
mm,
Medicare, Medicaid recognize it as a valid service. They have expectations, they have rules. There became this niche in the market that was needed to be filled. And so when Brittany sort of had that light bulb moment, really saw the need for a service line that was very diverse, that covered a number of different areas. There are lots of companies out there that do one thing, and they do it very, very well. But this is a different approach. It's an idea of having, multiple service lines that will ultimately affect physicians' offices and hospitals on their bottom line.
I feel like if she went through it, or if you've been through the hospital ringer, so to speak, for years, like you said, definitely can become familiar with all the ins and outs of the entire process. I feel like you don't even need years. I feel like if you're in it for a week, you're like, oh my gosh, like why are we doing this?
Yeah.
Why are we doing that? Again, we don't know all the details. There's probably are decent reasons as to why they do what they do, but it does seem like there's a target-rich environment in those
It's the truth,
hospitals.
absolutely. And I've been a hospital CEO kind of historically
Yeah.
and a lot in the rehab space. And so
Yeah.
I was a CEO during the COVID years. Challenging time for everybody in healthcare. I think
Mm,
we're starting to see recovery and but as a result of that, you're also seeing different developments of companies that maybe the idea began in the COVID years, the need was there and really was noticed in the COVID years, and now it's becoming part of the healthcare system.
hmm Yeah. Well, glad someone's working with these guys. So it's good stuff. What so it sounds like we might know the answer, but I just want to make sure who primarily does the business work with? It sounds like hospitals, but maybe there's even specific ones. So if I'm in the audience, how do I know if I'm a good fit for your service?
Physicians' offices are wonderful, great,
Yes.
but we also are meeting with school systems.
Okay.
School systems have, especially ones that are heavy into athletics.
Okay.
You have a lot of athletes that could benefit from some remote monitoring to make sure that they are, that they're maintaining their levels away from the field. Um, Certainly there's a potential there, especially with concussion protocols and whatnot, that,
hmm
all of those things, schools, they are another complete area that we can serve, and we have started to go that route as well. But primarily hospitals, doctors' offices, and then any type of an organization that has a large number of people within it. So a school system that has lots of athletes is really perfect.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good thought. Like you said, the athletes, I'm sure, have a lot of numbers and health things that they could be looking at and tracking while at home, so they can make sure they're optimal and kind of ready for the practices or the meets or the tournaments or whatever it is that
Well,
that
yeah,
they
and
have.
things have
So
changed, right? You remember when I was of that age, there was no monitoring of athletes. There
no.
was, if you got a concussion, you shake it off and you went home. And the world has changed, and certainly those level of services were available for the upper level
hmm
athletes at the time. But now we're seeing, all athletes having access to that is really important.
hmm Yeah. Cool. And so not sure how much competition you've got. What would you say makes the company unique, or why do clients, why do those different offices, why do they choose you guys versus someone
Yeah, I
else?
think that the biggest difference is the range of services
Okay.
primarily. I think that there are a number of companies out there that offer a couple of them, but there's not really someone out there that does all of it under one umbrella. That
Mhm.
is the first difference. And then the second difference would be really the leadership team. Our leadership group is steeped in about 50 years of healthcare experience, and whether it be in acute care or rehab or post-acute care, whatever it is, a lot of experience and a large Rolodex of organizations that can benefit from these services. So that's really how we've created our niche, and relationships go a long way in healthcare. You 100% have to be able to perform, but sometimes it's that relationship that gets that initial meeting, or opens the door to the C-suite.
Yeah, it's definitely nice if you have a relationship with a vendor or a service provider and you think they do good work. It's definitely nice if they have other things they could do for you. Of course, that's not always the case, but if it is, then you're
Yes.
like, great, I don't have to go try someone new out and get maybe two, three different people, and maybe one or two of them's good. It could be a pain in the butt to try to. So definitely a time saver, of course, and if it's good service, then you're ecstatic to get that person
Yes,
to help you with other things.
absolutely.
So you guys sound like that type of fit. So that's great. From a marketing perspective, obviously getting customers is one of the important things in business, or clients and whatever you call them. But what's been the number one marketing strategy that's helped you guys acquire customers? What's been the most successful marketing?
It's beating the streets. It's getting out and talking to people and meeting people. It's old school marketing. It's
Yeah.
we have a small team currently that's their role, is to really be active, to be making those connections, linking up those connections,
Hmm.
and really telling the story of the organization. Consistency is huge, and I think that
Hmm.
that's something that has ever been, anyone who's been in this position realize that it can't be, you're not just calling somebody one time and saying, hey, we have a great service, and then expecting them to continue the communication. That does not happen.
Right.
So it's about consistency, but it's consistency without being overbearing. I've been on the other side of the desk,
Hmm.
and so I've had lots of people come to my office, and there is a happy medium between consistency and being overbearing, that is really, really important, to forming those relationships. And then once the next sort of portion of that marketing bit is that once you have the established connections and you are performing, it's monitoring and sharing that data. Data is insanely important in healthcare. So if we can show what we are doing in one facility or in one physician's office or with one school district,
Hmm.
to be able to replicate it. So it's the ability to show the data, the savings that they are achieving, the quality improvements. You cannot, or you should not, separate savings from quality in healthcare. I can't stress that enough. I think there certainly are, as in any industry, there are companies that may not hold that value. But for us, they're hand in hand. Quality leads to business. It's
Hmm.
not the other way. You don't get the business and then do quality work. You do quality and then the business comes.
Yeah. So when you say the old school and getting out there, kind of generating those relationships, is that from like networking? Are you guys cold calling? Are you showing up at people's offices, dropping off some donuts? Like what is that? Do you know typically what's been the bigger?
Yeah, it's primarily been networking and cold calling to
Okay.
start. I
Yeah.
think as it grows, as things move forward, then you're into that relationship maintenance phase, and
Yeah.
there's more of the maybe the schmoozing, the donuts, the showing up, and that sort of stuff. But prior to that, it is absolutely networking and doing some cold calling. Cold calling is miserable. For anybody
Yeah.
who's ever done cold calling before, it's not fun. But if you are prepped and you have a strong product and you can speak to your business's wheelhouse,
Yeah.
those calls go better. You just can't go into them unprepared.
Yeah. I like that. Good stuff. Cool. And so as we look back on your journey thus far here, Regan, what has been the most memorable or maybe the hardest challenge, and how did you overcome it?
Um, so we've had challenges external to our four walls. That and it's part of just being in healthcare. You know, healthcare systems have their own priorities. We've been working with a number of them that have had things happen at their level that put significant delays onto us. Nothing that we could have changed, but it still changes how you run the business, right? So it's the biggest challenge has been the right timing, the right relationship, the right timing, and the right funding for that relationship. And putting all those three things together has been the challenge. So things that I've learned personally, there has to be patience. There, you don't want there to be patience. I don't tend to be the most patient of guys, but you have to be. You're working with large organizations, large organizations.
Yeah.
They're wrought with red tape, bureaucracy. They don't work on your timeline. They work
Yeah.
on their time.
Yeah.
So that's a challenge, right? And when you're running your organization, you have to be aware of there are these outside factors that are going to affect your timing of things.
Yeah.
So for example, we just recently put out a wave of letters for a new group of hires. Well, that's a big decision, right? And that's you have to do it at the right timing so that people aren't short work, people aren't not getting paid, people aren't that, all of those things. And that's, that patience really, I think sort of takes some time to grow. And I think as an organization, it's not just the C-suite or the CEO of the building that needs to be patient. It's the whole organization, and that is where it gets challenging, right? Because you have a lot of people that you have to coordinate.
Yeah. Yeah, so I used to work at Raytheon for 10 years and that's government, right? So not the fastest moving organization and obviously big company by itself without the government. So anyways, I remember there'd be if we got responses in 1 or 2 weeks, we are like, man, that was super fast. And now having mostly worked with small business owners for the last 10 years, I'm like, if we don't get something in like a day or two, it's like, what is taking so long?
Yeah.
So yeah,
Well, we
definitely.
we work off of the expectation that any new partnership with a facility, that procurement process is going to take about 18 months.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
it's not a
Right.
short cycle.
Right.
It does take time.
Yeah. Yeah, patience for sure. Yeah, I feel like we keep preaching that in my household. We could all probably benefit from some additional patience. So,
Mhm.
um, and so what about so you mentioned hiring folks and team is an important factor to be able to help more and more people out there, of course, in the market. So what's been some of your bigger learnings or maybe a bigger learning as an employer since you began?
Yeah, probably the biggest. And just again, my background being in organized hospitals, your there's a set of rules that you work within. You're part of a larger company. Each hospital is part of a larger company, so they have rules and expectations. If you're a CEO of those hospitals, you certainly have guidelines on how to run that organization. Free market, totally different. When we're
Mhm.
out into, working on a free company that is not based in a hospital, it's completely different. So for me, my biggest learning experience, and I think anybody that's going down this route is, my experience is there's no overnight success. It is a grind. It is work. And it takes time to establish those relationships. You can't forget about the relationships that you built 20 years ago, and how they might work in the new organization. But for me, it's all been about a day at a time, addressing an issue at a time, and moving beyond it and getting to the next one, and just kind of knocking them off like stair steps.
Yeah. What about specific to the team? Like you mentioned hiring some folks here. Are you, when you look at your use of team, the hiring of team, maybe even the letting go of team, like, what's maybe been one of your top nuggets that you've taken away from all this experience of team?
Yeah, we hire a lot of nurses, and that's one of our key groups. The country's at a shortage of nurses, and that is continuing to occur. So that is just innate in the market, that it's a challenge to get enough people on board.
Yeah,
Because of that, we partner in a number of different ways. We go a number of different routes. We have a partner with one of the largest healthcare staffing providers in the country, excuse me. And I think it's really essential to have strategic partnerships that
mm,
can take some of that off of your plate until until they've sourced them for you and you've been able
yeah,
to locate. We just don't have knowing what your bandwidth is really, really important. And we identified early on that we had the bandwidth to do a number of different things without partnerships. And
yeah,
then we identified three or four areas that, hey, we need someone to be our guy for this.
yeah,
And they will source those people. They will do the CPA service. They will do the background check, whatever it may be.
yeah,
And we made sure that we had a strong strategic partnership. And then again, trust. You have to be able to trust these partners. So, it's vetting, it's identifying, vetting yourself with them, and just establishing really strong partnerships to move forward.
yeah. I think once you start to see that it's something you're dealing with is not a one-time thing or even a once a month or maybe it's a once a week. Once it gets to like big enough or frequent enough, it's like, you know what? A partnership makes sense. Like it's going to start taking too much time to deal with it without one. And so,
Yes.
and of course, there's a lot of potential partnerships out there, and there really should be this win-win scenario where that partner is winning just like you are. So, but it takes some time, like you said,
Yeah,
to,
and I think
yeah,
it's knowing what you're good at. I think that that is a big part of any business, and knowing where your skill set is,
mm,
knowing your staff, knowing your team, knowing what
yep,
their strengths are,
yep,
and maximizing those strengths, and then supplementing outside.
yep,
And that just, having those external relationships are really important.
yep. Good stuff. What would you do different if you started everything over today? Given what you know and what you've learned and so forth over the last several years, what would you do different?
It's a tricky one. Sure, I'd like to be completely funded on day one, and have no issues with finances. Um, I think that for me personally, I came on board roughly November of last year. Um, More time. I think I would have liked to ideally had my foot in the door a little bit earlier in the
Mm,
process and in my process, and I think that just builds a stronger base to the company. I think that maybe not from the start, but a little ways in, I've identified sort of that the key group of your hires is that business development sales team has got to be so tight and solid, that um, maybe, and this isn't anything about what we have or don't have, it's just having more of them. It's just
yep,
having more of really strong salespeople, business development growth to support the strong people that we already have here, because you quickly stretch those people thin.
yep,
And then then they can't service all of the potential, the future potential. So it's to be able to have a bench that is not only building new partnerships, building new relationships, but servicing those ones that you are maintaining and growing.
business development, the item that will almost always be rather valuable. And of course, that's why if you can do really well in business development, you can make a pretty good amount of money. Sometimes more than than the ownership or the management. But yeah, it's also a tough challenge. It's not the easiest set of skills
Absolutely.
to make headway with. So, um, what about are you, given the time that you've been in business and been involved, are you where you expected to be at this stage?
We're probably, I would say, a couple months behind where we initially thought,
Hmm.
and that's more than anything due to external factors.
Yeah.
When you're working with large organizations, if they take on a large new initiative, which one of our partners did, everything else goes to the back burner. And
Mm.
everything else is sort of slowed down as they take that on. So one of our partners took on a new electronic medical record. And anybody who has been in healthcare knows that that is a daunting experience, even for small hospitals, but for large systems, it's enormous. And it just happened to take extra time. It just kind of pushed that timeline a little bit out. We are a little bit at the will of our partners as to when they are fully ready to go. So there has been some delays
Hmm.
with that. From an organizational standpoint, putting the pieces in place, we're right where we want to be and where we thought we would be today. So it's just we've got the parts. The pieces with the partnerships are coming
Hmm.
together, and then we're ready to roll. But that would be the only delays that we've really seen.
Yeah. What's the next goal or milestone?
Next goal, I think the next goal is to really increase our size. I do expect to be hiring a significant number of staff members over the next 2 years. Um, we're undertaking a couple of large partnerships, and the next big step would be to add a third of those.
Okay.
And once we've got three of these large partnerships, that for the most part is your bandwidth. That is really what you are servicing. And that would be the next milestone for us. I think that takes us up a complete other level as a company, from a revenue standpoint, but also from a hiring and manpower standpoint. That is what
Mm.
kind of notches us up another level. So that's our goal, and our goal for that would be sometime in the next 18 months to have that solidified.
Awesome. And so, last question before our final question. If others want to learn more about you, your company, or they just want to get in contact, how could they do that?
So we do have a website. I will warn you, it is dated and antiquated, and it is in the phases of being improved. But it is ihsinfinite.com. People can always go there. The easiest way is to reach out to us directly. Our contact information is on that website. We are based up in Addison, and it's pretty easy to reach us. LinkedIn is always a great connection point too. So anybody can track me down on LinkedIn. Easy to start a conversation. Any questions? If they know somebody that might be someone we want to look at hiring, I'm always interested in meeting good people. You cannot find enough strong people to hire. So I'm always listening to recommendations and connections.
Cool. And any special offers you'd like to offer any listeners?
I don't know that we have any special offers other than, I think that we are looking for partnerships. We're looking for people to work with. So more than interested in having conversations with anyone who might think that they would fit this niche or that we could work with them. Be happy to have those conversations.
All right. Sounds good. Well, thank you so much, Regan, for joining us and sharing some of your information, details, story. And thank you, of course, to the audience for watching and hopefully sharing some of these nuggets that you've gotten. And outside of that, thanks again for joining us, Regan. And we say to the rest of you, make it a great day.
Thanks very much.